welcome. You are watching the Week in Review. I'm your host, Ade Darame, and here to go through the stories with me, I have Mamadou Mbodj. Mr. Mbodj, welcome to the program. You thought I was going to surprise you with a different welcome, eh? Welcome to the program.
It's one of those.
Yeah, indeed. And here we have, doing the signing, we have Lamindi Sonko, for those of you who missed him last week and were worried. Somebody even contacted me during the week and said, I hope he's coming back. Yes, he is coming back and he's here. And for anybody watching this for the first time, the show is called The Week in Review because we go through 10 big stories from the week just gone by, and we go through them in some detail. Some stories requiring a bit more detail than others. So in terms of the menu, well, President Barrow received the Senegalese Prime Minister, Ousmane Sonko, at State House, and PM Sonko also attended an investment forum here in the Gambia. And ECOWAS, the regional body, has approved a tribunal for the Gambia to try human rights cases. And National Assembly members, they passed the budget without a debate, but we thought it might be contentious, and so it has proved, and we'll get into that. And the National Youth Conference and Festival, NACONF, kicked off this week. 2,000 youths from across the country have descended on Kanifing to debate, to take part in sports, and to draft some various important messages that they hope will be carried through by those in power and with authority to carry through such messages. Also, a bunch of ministers, 5 of them, appeared at the National Assembly, and they were given a hard time, and some interesting revelations came to light. And also, there's been a survey of Madrasa education conducted by Ban Mohammed Loom, and that survey has concluded, and it's again through a spotlight on Madrasa education and what needs to be done to bring it into the general curriculum. Also, we had an interesting story. Mile 2 inmates have actually been doing productive work, producing goods that were on sale at an international fair. And of course, very interesting story which got a lot of views online. Some ex-pupils decided to surprise their former teacher. He's been at the school for over 20 plus years. So these are some of the stories on tonight's program. So first up, of course, where else to start than with the visit of Prime Minister Sonko, Ousmane Sonko, to the Gambia, and particularly his visit to the State House. Have a look, have a listen.
The purpose of our visit is to discuss the plans of President Bassirou Diomaye Diakhar Faye to promote the peaceful relationship between the two sister nations. This relationship has gone up to the level of the Senegal-Gambia Confederation. That is why, since we assumed office, we have embarked on a series of bilateral engagements to agree on terms to strengthen the cordial relationship. The visit to the State House came a day after PM Sonko had been guest of honor at the investment forum organized by the Gambia Investment and Export Promotion Agency, GAIPA, and its Senegalese equivalent, APEC. After the press briefing,
Mr. Mbodj, a case of we've been here before, the Senegal-Gambia Confederation. When this new breed, these young men took over, Sonko and Diomaye Faye, people said, oh, you know, what would the relationship be? Because, you know, Macky Sall seemed to have a good... for me, I think people always overrated that relationship between them, mainly because sometimes they dressed alike, and so people thought somehow they were almost twins. But, you know, the sister nations, and generally relations between Gambian leaders and Senegalese leaders have been cordial. But who would have guessed that these guys would be the one to try and revive the Senegal-Gambia Confederation?
Can you imagine? Imagine that.
Rather than Macky Sall and Barrow.
That's it. But this is it, Ade. The relationship's been evolving.
Sure.
From Jawara Senghor, afterwards
right.
Jawara Abdou
Diouf,
and
yeah,
things
quite.
moved on.
Quite.
Wadi Jammeh. Remember the
which was a bit more fraught.
That's it. That was the turbulent
usual
period. Now President Barrow, first Macky Sall, but now with the Young Turks.
Quite.
So for me, the question is this, with Diomaye Faye and the agenda they have, I wonder how he sees, how does he conceptualize, what are the policies that they've got in our relationship between the Gambia and Senegal. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So what would be their emphasis? The direction, no doubt, just as they said, we want peace, you know.
Of course, the kind of general stuff.
That's it, you know, more trade, more this, more that.
That's
of course, they're going to say all of that.
Sure.
But with them, what would be the emphasis?
Because
the agenda,
yeah.
that's it. How do we sit, as it were, in their agenda, in their scheme of things?
Well, this is it, because one of the thing he mentioned there, the Senegal-Gambia Confederation, he said, you know, we came with it, because Jomai Faye had made a speech that they wanted to revive this and make it work, because he felt it's just been sitting there, a piece of paper, and, you know, people made all nice noises when it was signed about how we're going to strengthen ties and improve this, that, and the other. But you and I know, you know, people crossing the border get hassled, they get ripped off by officials, sometimes on both sides of the border, let's be blunt. And so there have been problems. And they said, you know, look, this thing is a good thing. Let's revive it. Let's have a proper office, a proper secretariat. Let's capacitize it, a word I hate, and I even hate saying it even more. You know, let's give it some teeth and let's make it, you know, come to life. So, you know, quite an ambition.
Absolutely. But you see, Eddie, there's an elephant in the living room here, really, and that is really a sovereignty issue. There has always been sort of, on our part, this fear, this threat that Senegal really want to gobble us up.
And swallow up the Gambia. Yeah.
Yes. From Jawara's time, I mean, when you read his book,
this is,
that fear,
exactly.
as it were.
Yes.
That's it. So we've had this relationship of this bigger country that's virtually encircled yours. We're like Siamese twins. You know, we're condemned, geographical Siamese twins. So we're condemned by that to get along somehow.
Yes,
and yes, what goes along with that is that because of the nature of our borders, we're essentially the same people. It's like this arbitrary stuff, you know. Jomai Faye there spoke in Wolof. And everybody in Gambia understands that. And our vice president could have spoken Wolof as well. So that tells you really the relationship. But just as with any relationships, once in a while, as they say, the teeth and the tongue live together, but once in a while, you know, they jam.
As the
so
Jamaicans
this
say,
is really what it is.
Yeah, and you know, as I mentioned there, he also attended an investment forum where they were looking at you know, possible investments and trying to encourage Senegalese businesses to invest in the Gambia and vice versa. And so their kind of sister organizations, GAIPA, our GAIPA, and their APEX were kind of working and co-hosted this seminar at which you know, Sonko attended and spoke. And yeah, again, exploring things, but yeah, I mean, when people saw it, there was a kind of cynical view. Really what we want is, for example, just simple cross-border travel. If they could even solve that one, that would be a start, because, you know, according to ECOWAS, it shouldn't be a problem, it shouldn't be a hassle, and yet it is, despite all the brotherly talk and this and that, you know, so.
Absolutely. So this is it. When he appeared as guest of honor, the GAIPA, and then I thought, okay, is that one of the pillars of whatever plan they have? Increased trade and looking at opportunities and that sort of thing. And then I thought, I wonder what's been the reasons, what have been the reasons for our trade between the two countries not really beyond where it is right now, beyond where it is right now, and that sort of thing. If we do not look into that, then we wouldn't know. But with the secretariat, the Senegal-Gambia secretariat, which is really very important, isn't it? That's really the forum where we should be discussing all sorts of things.
This is it.
But why is it that it's been sort of dormant? Hasn't it? You hardly hear about it. In fact, the minister, our vice president actually said, with the consultative commission, they had not met since 2011.
I know.
That sort of thing. And we all know the regular issues that we have. They come up once in a while, transport and the border.
You'd imagine that they'd meet even if only to discuss those.
So this is my thing, Adam. In what areas can we have greater collaboration? So far, there's just been talk with this, with that, but you don't really get the sense that these people have really a close, warm, working relationship, because I would have thought that in many areas we have to work together. The most obvious one, when you look at the sort of these boats, these vessels.
Yeah, quite. That's
death
straight
traps,
into
you call it.
quite.
Exactly,
Yeah.
given the nature of the sea.
Yeah, quite.
We are better off really working together
Sure.
closely. So there might be other areas where we could actually perhaps even harmonize.
Well, this is it.
To our
Well, in
benefit.
fact, there was one which is not a big and kind of sexy one, but there was a joint meeting on malaria control.
Exactly.
And so the reporter who went said to me, you know, well, why do we need to work on malaria control with Senegal? I said, because of our borders are even more porous to mosquitoes than they are to human beings. A mosquito doesn't respect that there's even a border. So if we have a bad malaria control program, it's going to affect them and vice versa. So we're bound to work together, and that's why they had this joint forum this week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also understand that interests do not always converge.
Go on.
And will
They'll
never always
never,
converge,
yeah.
not all of them.
Correct.
One understands that. But because of the relationship,
Sure.
we hope that you have a good conflict management mechanism.
Indeed.
Because conflict would emerge
It's
inevitably.
inevitably.
It's just human relationship.
Sure.
So mature relationships prepare for that. You know what I mean?
Go ahead.
That sort of thing. So this is it. Sonko being a very popular person in this country. Quite
indeed.
extraordinary.
Lots of young people admiring him.
Lots
Yes,
of young
indeed.
people admiring him.
Yeah, sure.
So we are looking to see how their revolution would pan out.
Yes,
so
yes, yes.
for some of us, we have to suspend judgment.
Absolutely.
So
I think we should, yes.
yes, and sort of what direction, what
Judge.
emphasis would emerge out of this? What kind of relationship would Jomai Faye, Adam Barrow, what would it look like?
Yeah, quite.
You know.
And I said to the colleagues who were getting excited, I said, let their deeds be what we judge them on, not their words. So I agree with you. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 2, a very different one. Recently, the ECOWAS Parliament had rejected a bid to establish a tribunal for the Gambia to try those responsible for human rights violations, the most serious human rights violations. However, recently, the heads of states of ECOWAS met in Abuja, as well as having to deal with Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso finally exiting and their exit being accepted. They also agreed on something relating to the Gambia. What was that? You've probably guessed. Have a look, have a listen anyway.
The ECOWAS Parliament had rejected the establishment of the tribunal, but that decision has been overridden by the heads of state. The approval of the special tribunal is expected to bring justice to victims of gross human rights violations in the Gambia, but would also contribute to wider regional and international efforts to combat impunity, uphold the rule of law, and promote human rights. The move has been welcomed by the Gambia-based Alliance of Victim-Led Organizations, AVLO. The establishment of the tribunal marks the first time that ECOWAS has partnered with a member state to create an internationalized court, especially to prosecute crimes of such gravity within its own territory.
Mr. Mboj, you heard there, and when that came up in the office, somebody said, oh, what about the Sierra Leone court? Well, that was kind of funded by external, the EU and others. Funded the Sierra Leone court and gave approval for it. But this time it's ECOWAS that's actually effectively taking the lead by giving the nod to say, yes, go ahead, you can do it with kind of a mixture, kind of hybrid tribunal similar to the Sierra Leone one of Gambian and international law to prosecute the people. And they've said, yes, now we can go ahead, having been kind of not exactly rejected, but kind of they passed the buck a bit, the parliament did really, when it came in front of them.
Well, they've been very much part of, as it were, our transition. They're entangled with our politics now.
Yeah.
From 2016, 17,
yeah,
absolutely, they had to really push.
Yeah, they sent troops here.
Jame out,
Yeah,
and
quite.
so really they've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
involved the whole time. And right now, we have there's an ECOWAS mission economic in this country right now.
Yeah, still.
So this is it, and apparently. The parliament didn't reject it
No.
as such,
Yeah,
according to Hussein Tomasi.
Yeah,
anyway,
in an article. Yeah.
yes, saying that it had been deferred.
Yeah, quite.
That's it. And it had to go through several bodies before eventually getting to the authority of the heads of state and government. And that sort of thing.
I think the reason people have said it was rejected was because there was strong objection to it
absolutely
on the floor. Which is why it wasn't given the Parliament's approval. You're absolutely right.
So that sort of thing. But this is it. Obviously, we made the request because of our shortcomings.
Of course.
We needed a partner, and it seemed sort of reasonable to go to ECOWAS, the most immediate. So this is it. They've agreed, adopted the statute of the tribunal. So now the challenge is constituted. Yes, you'll have all sorts of bureaucratic stuff perhaps to do. But it's a step at a time. Some of us thought that this would really take a long time. And it isn't that nothing has happened. Few things have happened, I mean, under universal jurisdiction. And that's all part of the reckoning process, isn't it? This is what's available internationally. So we use these instruments. Usman Sonko in jail.
The other Usman Sonko.
The other Usman Sonko, of course. Absolutely. And Bailo. Korea going to he's on trial. So this is even Yankuba Toure. Yeah, it's all linked to that.
So they are.
So that's it. It was always going to be a long haul. So a step at a time, then we'll see what happens.
I told somebody that 2026 was my prediction for when it might actually start.
Absolutely.
So we'll wait and see, but that's just a wild prediction, which would make it sort of 10 years since the fall of Jammeh, as it were. So,
big time. I mean, given the capacity and 22 years, what in the end, 240 or so died.
Quite.
You know, at least unaccounted for. They have something to answer for.
That's right.
And that's it. In the end, what? About 69, something like that. Prosecutions, recommended prosecutions, and all sorts of things. And then being in a transition, people are coming in perhaps without this sort of requisite experience to handle such a complex situation. So you sort of know that, this might drag out a bit longer than...
It could very well drag out, Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And speaking of complex situations, normally when the Finance Minister presents the budget to the National Assembly, there's kind of a bit of contention on the floor, but it wasn't so this time. And was that a good thing? Well, you decide. Have a look, have a listen.
I want to move a motion that we go straight to the Committee of Supply without debate. This motion was meant to rescind the earlier motion.
However, the Parliament's Monday session took a sudden U-turn, with members scrambling to decide whether to debate the budget bill or expedite the bill to the Committee of Supply stage in the absence of a debate, which is the normal procedure. After a general vote, 21 members supported the motion to skip the debate for the appropriation bill, while 11 members voted against the motion with 1 abstention. Following this landmark decision, the Finance and Economic Affairs Minister C.D.M. Keita quickly commended the bold cooperation of the National Assembly members.
Mr. Mboj, he commended them, but already there's been a legal challenge to this. Madi Jobate and others have issued. That's right. Salute Tal is representing them. And what they've said is that it's fallen on several. I mean, the one headline grabbing one was that it was passed to committee stage without a debate. So that was contentious enough. But what they're also saying is that the law is quite clear. It's there in black and white. At least 60 days before the end of the year, you have to lay it. Of course, we know that there's much less than 60 days to the end of the year. And so on that and various grounds, it's been challenged. But there was surprise, wasn't there, when we heard that it had gone this way and had been accepted. And because it wasn't as if it was unanimous. There was disagreement as to whether that should happen.
Oh, absolutely. But again, for me, the interesting thing really for me was the fact that it was the NAMs themselves who voted to have a debate. At least 21 of them, from our report, 21 voted not to have debate.
That's right.
And 11 voted to have the debate. That's what, 32?
Quite.
And I think there was one abstention.
One abstention, that's right.
That's it, 33. Then I was asking myself,
where the rest? I know when I saw the figures, exactly the thought. I think everybody who saw the figures
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So quite remarkable there. One of the NAMs said that was unprecedented. It has never happened before.
Right.
And people in management, senior management, tend to be fearful of sort of bypassing process.
Yeah, sure.
You really have to follow the process.
That's right.
Can you imagine one of the most important documents, national documents,
Well, that's
really,
right.
which essentially tells us how much money we have, we
And
bring it in, and how much we are spending,
And they set aside two or 3 days had been set aside in the calendar for it.
And they had agreed, apparently, yes,
yeah.
and they had passed a motion, according to Alaji Dabo, the leader of the minority leader in the assembly. So he said that they had already passed a motion that they're going to have a debate.
Yes, right.
To my mind, what happened
in
between
the interim?
for them to suddenly realize that, oops, we do not have time.
Yeah, quite.
So that is really very, very curious.
Yeah, it was indeed. So, as I said, there's already a legal challenge, and we'll see where that.
We'll see where it goes. And you know, with me, I believe in parliamentary sovereignty.
Yeah, sure. Well, indeed.
But sometimes decisions like this makes me wonder.
Yeah, well, quite.
It's
kind of weird.
So now the courts will decide. Yes, well, according to the speaker, well, you can have a subsequent motion that rescinds a previous one.
Exactly.
That sort of
That's
thing.
Right.
How that falls with good practice, as it were, that's a different question, of course. So, but this is it. But the National Assembly members voted for it.
I know.
So I really can't get that round, my head round that. And it isn't as if they were just doing it on party lines.
No,
when you look at the numbers.
The numbers,
nothing like that at all.
So, yes.
So I'm sure we'll continue to
watch this space, as it were.
And all kinds of debates will be on this.
As they've already started. Thank you for that, Mr. Burge. Story number 4, the National Youth Conference and Festival, NICONF, kicked off this week, and it's really a grand affair. 2,000 youths from all corners of the country have descended on Kanifing. Have a look and have a listen to what's happening.
I would like to urge all of you to remain steadfast and to ensure that you take part effectively in the deliberations that would happen. And at the last day, the conference resolution should not just capture the ideas of the leaders, but capture those visions that each one of you, coming from all the 7 regions, would have.
So not just the resolutions of the leaders, but from the regions. And in another broadcast, we heard somebody from the organizing committee talk about how they had reached out to various youth groups to get their take on it, and how much, in fact, they'd been surprised by the strength of some of the proposals and resolutions that were put forward, that came through that kind of youth engagement. It's about youth, and I guess obviously the Minister for Youth and Sports officially opened the conference part of it. And then, if anybody doesn't know, there are also sporting activities, volleyball, football, I think basketball as well, as part of it. But it's quite an interesting convergence. It's every 2 years that is held. So currently Kanifing is hosting everybody.
Oh, absolutely. And in the old days, we used to call it Youth Week. I think the first one was in 1974.
Right.
But that really focused really on sports. Essentially sports, really, particularly the football. Remember the first region to win the football match in Bakau.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, first Youth Week, Bakau won the football match, and Banjul couldn't believe that.
Wow, exactly, quite.
So this is the emphasis here being what? Engagement, dialogue, exchange, that sort of thing.
Because people are saying they want it to be more than a talking shop. And I think that's what's kind of driving them this time, to say, as the Minister was hinting there, come up with strong resolutions. Okay, you can come up with strong resolutions, but are the people who should be bound by those resolutions, are they going to be willing to be bound by those resolutions?
That's it. So when I talk about resolutions, of course, with us we'll ask the question, what actions would that lead you to? So what actually are you going to do next? You know,
Yeah.
what we say is what we say, what we do is something else. So we need to know that. But for me, more broadly, in how we talk about Gen Z,
yeah, quite.
that's
quite.
really most of these kids.
Yeah,
when
quite.
you imagine that,
Right.
what, 65% or so,
Yeah,
they're
quite.
under 35,
35.
perhaps even more.
Yeah.
Then you wonder, what's really their project?
Yeah, quite.
You see, without a generation, there was something about, I don't know, coming home, running one of these parastatals, running these government agencies, but making it work.
Well, that's right.
There was a bit of
Yeah,
idealism.
yeah, very much so.
Yes, I think people wanted money, fine,
of course.
granted.
Yeah.
But my friend Papanjai, now the High Commissioner in Nigeria, said legacy, that's what they used to call it, you know. So there was this wanting to sort of leave a legacy,
Sure.
you know, how you work and stuff like that. So I wonder, is there anything such as the project of youth?
And the generation before that, their project or their grandparents had been about getting independence and so on. So they had something to aim for.
They had something to aim for, the wider stuff, much broader than my own personal ambition. Of course, you want to be a lawyer, doctor, and all of that. But there was also a social dimension, as it were, to that individual achievement in order to do something else. So I'm trying to guess from what I read about youth, what's really their project? I can't get it. Everybody seems to be sort of taken in, bewitched by the phone.
Quite.
So always sort of like external content, if you know what I mean. I don't know. Even though when you look at other areas or the countries on the continent, we've seen recently youth getting up in Kenya,
in Nigeria, Peter Obi leading people in Uganda.
Yes,
but
to
Wine
me,
and those.
that tells me what you are against.
Quite.
What are you for?
This is it.
Apart from the words.
Well, this is
See,
it.
we can be very good at equality and all of this. Then I put you in a position, you become exactly like that which you condemn.
Well, we've seen that in Senegal, where some of the laws that were used against the people who are now in power, they are now using against the opposition. So it's easy to talk when you're in opposition and saying, I'm against it. Well, I've always said this, when you get into power and reality slaps you in the face, you start behaving as the very people you're condemning. And that's exactly what we're seeing in Senegal.
So Ade, this is our challenge. How can I go to public office and maintain my integrity and, you know, doing things the right way? I'm focusing a bit on legacy as well, as it were, much more than the other, what I call perks. For me, the legacy, that's the really more important thing. That's really what the nation wants. Anything else, that's for you. So you and your family, you know.
Well, that's right. So if you look at the kind of coup-led Francophone countries, they, in a sense, have something to aim at, the kind of anti-colonial, the continued presence of France in their countries. They can all rally around that, the kind of rejection of the former colonial rulers. But for the rest, you know, what is it you're for? As you said, we know what you're against. Well, what are you for? You know,
and in that situation, then once you reject that, then there are certain values you're rejecting as well. You see? Because you still think that your system is still being distorted, contorted by that influence. Exactly. So once I do that, then it means there are some reforms I need to make the corresponding change within.
This is it.
Otherwise, you know, it means nothing really. You've just broken off with one people and next you'll be going to Russia. It's the same logic, really, in many ways. So, yes, what that implies.
Yes, in fact, I was reading an article this week called Hidden Cost. I don't know, it was Economist or somewhere, and it was saying that why do a lot of Africans who are embracing Russia and China seem to think that it's at no cost? And of course, they want the minerals we have, or they want to support them in international arenas and so on. So it's not a no-cost thing, but they're saying that, you know, the kind of jubilation around them seems to think that it's at no cost, that they're somehow better than the colonizers.
And China looks at Africa as a country.
Yeah, quite.
So in some areas it may look like, oh, you're gaining so much, you know, things wouldn't be even. So, but with them it's just the aggregate. It's the aggregate. It's really the crucial minerals, as it were, that would fuel, as it were, the industries and that sort of thing. So obviously, in certain areas, you're going to see fantastic development, as it were. But to them, what does it mean? That's a plus for them. It's a bonus for them. And they just, they're not hypocritical, the West, really. They are in many ways. They like preaching rules-based this, rules-based that, and values. But sometimes history forces them for them to reveal their true colors. Right now, we are going through one of those moments. So this is it. This is what China is going to do. How are we going to respond? We cannot respond with single voice. If we could, perhaps we would have made so much difference. But we can't. You have different voices, different leanings, different ideologies, and all the right. So we are at the mercy of China for now.
Still.
You have to put it that way.
Absolutely.
First it was the West, now we've gone East. Can you imagine?
Amazing. Right. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And on to story number 5, which will also take us to a break. I mentioned at the top of the show when I was introducing the stories, I mentioned that National Assembly members had the ministers rather appear before them, and they threw some questions. But one of the ones which has elicited a lot of comment online was this little exchange. Have a look, have a listen, and you'll understand why.
Civil servants fail to observe available procedures when leaving their jobs. They will unceremoniously abandon their posts, and their immediate supervisors will not normally report their absence on time to prevent wrongful payment of salaries. The number of people issued diplomatic passport is 3,030. The diplomatic passports are issued based on criteria established by the government and for the following officials: senior government officials, members of parliament, diplomats, presidential and government advisors.
I was interested there because I worked in the British civil service and there was a time when I was a senior government official. I didn't get a diplomatic passport. Neither did my boss, who was several rungs above me. He was the CEO of the organization. He didn't have a diplomatic passport. So when I hear talk about senior government officials and others, and there was a gasp, I was told, even in the well of the assembly, when the figure was revealed, 3,030 since 2017. It seemed a lot. We had nothing to compare it with, sadly, but I'm sure with access to information, we'll be able to do that, Mr. Mboj. But of course, the big question then, people were saying, can we see the breakdown? Can we see the list of who and who got these diplomatic passports?
Absolutely. For me, when I heard that number, then I thought, I wonder, how do we compare to others? For me, so that I can have a kind of baseline, because I really do not know what to make of it.
It seems a lot.
Absolutely,
but
it
if
seems
we compare,
a lot. But when put in context, how is it like? So I'm not really sure. Yes, of course, when he enumerated all these categories that the people entitled, as it were, whether they're given or not at a different point, to these diplomatic passports, then sort of the next question I asked myself, what would be the effects of giving these diplomatic passports to one's too many, you know what I mean, to more than necessary, you know what I mean, all these crucial questions that would put the whole thing in context, then I'll know how to feel about it. I don't know how to feel about it because I cannot contextualize it yet, you know what I mean, and what would be the repercussions if you give too many or too little, as it were, that sort of thing. That's something I
of
need
course,
to do.
One of the things it does is that you can sail through the airports without the hassle of being checked and inspected, and that seems to be the main thing. And of course, you can say to people, "I'm a diplomat, and here's my passport to prove it," and you get an extra pass. But the debate online seemed to be that, as I said, we don't have the figures, so you can't really. But they said that they felt as if it had been cheapened, but we don't know for sure whether that's the case. Although people were claiming, "I know so and so who's got it," and they're not a diplomat and really shouldn't have it, but that's just anecdotal stuff.
Yes, for me the important question is this. If I'm up to no good, how would this diplomatic passport help me?
No.
Isn't it? I'm thinking about people who would do stuff that would perhaps sully the integrity of the passport.
Sure.
You make no mistake, in many countries, if you lose that, they will search you at the airport, whether you like it or not. We all know that. So it all depends on what respect it commands internationally.
Sure.
Otherwise, don't worry, they will do what they need to do if they feel that there's something wrong being done, something improper. So stuff like that. So it's just what's in our interest. How are we judging who to give it to? Is it legitimate to include all these categories? Is that normal practice? And what risks do we face when you give too many or too little? I mean, these are some of the key questions I'm going to ask and move.
They had an interesting case in England recently, 2 years ago, when the wife of a US diplomat knocked down and killed somebody.
Yes.
And she claimed diplomatic immunity. And the Brits were arguing that your husband was the diplomat.
Not you,
you're not entitled. So after 2 years of wrangling, I think she agreed to go back.
No, she left. She left. She went back to the US, but again.
That's right.
Yeah.
And of course, because of the kind of cordial relations between, eventually, she went back and faced the court. But as you said, what benefits are there? And that's kind of the thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is it. For the sake of the passport, if you can put it that way, for the sake of the country, give these things to the right people.
Yeah, quite.
That's really how you would maintain the integrity. Yeah, I think in the end, not, I don't know, for instance, I don't know, maybe sometimes political favors, So
well, of course,
there
was the rumor, which we couldn't substantiate, at UN General Assembly, when it was alleged that we took 91 people. And if Gambia can take 91 people, UN General Assembly, God knows how many Nigeria would have taken. But and of course, I'm sure those 91 had diplomatic passports. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that brings us nicely to the midpoint in terms of stories. We'll go for a commercial break, and after the commercial break, we will come back with 5 equally cracking stories. Don't go away. Join us after the break.
Introducing the Q-Smart and Q-Smart Plus, where innovation meets affordability. Capture life's precious moments with stunning clarity thanks to our high-resolution cameras. Enjoy uninterrupted performance with a fast processor and a long-lasting battery that keeps up with your day. The Q-Smart offers a 5.9-inch immersive display, powerful performance, and an all-day battery life, all for just $3,400. Plus get an incredible bundle of 15 gigabytes of data, 120 minutes of talk time, and 300 SMS absolutely free. Upgrade to the Q-Smart Plus, featuring a faster processor and extended battery life, and a larger 6.5-inch screen for just $4,000. With it, you receive a massive 30 gigabytes of data, 300 SMS, and 120 minutes of talk time completely free. All bundles are spread across a 3-month period. Don't miss out. Get your Q-Smart or Q-Smart Plus from QCell today. Discover the best in quality and value right here in the Gambia. Available at all QCell customer care centers across the country. For more information, call 111. QCell's the new boss. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and going through the stories with me, I have Mr. Mahmoud Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, thank you for your insights. And I have Lamindi Sonko doing the signing. So for those who are only joining us now, you know what I'm going to say. You missed some 5 very, very good stories, but no panic, 5 really good ones to come, including the next one. Young man Mohammed Loom did some very extensive research into Madrasa education in the Gambia. Why was that important? Have a look, have a listen, and you'll find out.
Madrasa graduates are often faced with realities of being restricted to being Quranic teachers, known as Ustaz, and Imams, by being integrated into the general education, will be able to learn skills in STEM subjects and TVET to become employable in different and a wide range of sectors of the economy. Imam Babali is a classical example of someone who went through a madrasa education and still did conventional education to become an engineer.
And we want to have our madrasas also being trained professionally that they can become engineers, they can become civil engineers, they can become medical doctors, and so forth.
There you have it. Imam Babali, an engineer by profession. And Mr. Mboj, of course, now in the Gambia, when we say madrasa, we are talking about these schools where people go for instruction in Islamic knowledge and in the religion of Islam. In Arab countries, madrasa just means any school. But with us, it's come to mean, that. And there has been this talk for a long time that they are kind of restricting themselves, because once you graduate from that school, there are only so many people who can be imams or ustazes. So what else can you do? How can you contribute to society? So there's been this debate about bringing in the kind of general curriculum to join with the Islamic instruction. And that's what Mohammed Loom's survey has, and this conference was looking at the results of that survey.
Absolutely, and they're giving us Imam Babali as an example. And I have to say, when I was younger, we were used to religious leaders being brilliant scholars, secular.
Yeah.
Talking about the secular, Al-Hadi Abdullah Job, former Imam of Banjul, Imam Rat of Banjul.
Right.
God, highly educated, language impeccable, that sense of history, philosophy, and all the rest of it. And there were others, a good number of them became teachers in high schools, part of the secular education process. Of course, the madrasas, they must be mainstreamed. Now you have many more compared to when we were younger. You didn't hear of much, as it were, but recently you've had this explosion of this. And they must be mainstreamed.
Yeah, sure.
I read one scholar the other day discussing northern Nigeria. For a very long time, these people were getting education, kind of a madrasa-like, but they were not mainstreamed, not integrated.
Sure.
So they were just left to their own devices. So afterwards, what did you have? Certain extremist elements emerged.
Well, this is it.
Some blame the rise today of Boko Haram and other groups like that because of that government policy in many ways, just to ignore, leave them to themselves. That is dangerous, really, for the country in the longer term. So you must integrate them.
Must integrate, and we're doing that. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now, something that we're also trying to do is we're trying to promote a blue economy. What's a blue economy? No, it's not that. Have a look, have a listen.
The Blue Economy Workshop was part of the Gambia Maritime Administration's mandate to develop strategies that allowed the Gambia to benefit from its maritime resources. Throughout the 5-day deliberations, participants including government officials, policymakers, maritime experts, local community members and private sector representatives engaged in in-depth discussions and activities designed to teach and highlight the importance of the blue economy to the Gambia. Wandifa Saidi Lee, the Director of Marine Environment at the GMA, shared the insights gained during the workshop.
We have delved into the depths of the blue economy, exploring its immense potential and the critical need for sustainable practices. We have shared insights, discussed ideas, and suggested proposals that will pave the way for innovative solutions and the collaborative efforts to harness the opportunities that the Gambia's blue economy has to offer.
Harnessing the opportunities in Mboj, we have the Atlantic Ocean and we have the river. And yet, until this conference, when I looked at it and I looked at surveys and I tried to find out stuff online, I was really struggling as a part of my research for when we were doing this story about efforts to actually capitalize on Gambia's blue economy, that is the maritime bit. But now it seems we're taking that first baby step into actually looking to the potential of it.
Absolutely. And now it will involve renewable energy as well. There's broadly sort of sustainable ocean economy, as it were. So they call it. Absolutely, and the opportunities there. You know, perhaps now the way we're thinking about it is a bit narrow, but when you go into it, it's huge. There are so many different areas encompassed, as it were, within this term, blue economy. So what opportunities are presented to entrepreneurs, people who want to invest, and all the rest of it. And it is so significant when you take just fishing, for instance. You know, according to one statistic in 2022, 12% of our GDP. From fishing. So how do you expand that, and how do you harness, as it were, other areas?
And the port expansion.
And the port expansion
at Sanyang, that's also part of sort of tapping into it, because we have this long coastline. It's not that long, admittedly, but we haven't used it or utilized it as best as we could have.
Absolutely, but this is it now. This is what we want to do, and you would, of course, include one private sector to really lead in many areas. That's what you do. But have you got the conditions that would make that possible? For instance, when you think of finance.
Go on.
You know what I mean? When you look at the interest rates, it's so high. It is really so difficult to go through banks formally to get finance, which is so significant if you want to invest. How do we deal with that? Apparently, Mohammed Yunus, Bangladesh, that was really his genius. How did he do it? So stuff like that. You have really the whole infrastructure for that to work before you will get people investing into this. So everything is just interlinked. Things are interlinked. So how all the areas go in many ways will determine what happens here.
Indeed, and it was 5 days, and they delve into a lot of stuff. Thank you for that, Mr. Amborch. And now, when we think of Mile 2, if you go back 15, 20 years, you probably think of the most horrible things. But now, there's a change at Mile 2, and some of that change we came across quite by accident when we went to visit a trade fair at the National Stadium. What was that? Have a look and you'll find out.
It's really helping. They're really opening up, and I really, really wish people would see how enthused these people are, these ladies are, to learn, to do something. It would really help them. That last time they told me that they just casually told me that their TV wasn't working and it would help them with the stress. That was even before the training started, or this trade fair thing, because they were very fast. I gave them the material. I think it took them like less than 3 weeks. And then they were done. And they're like, we want more. I'm like, no, we have to sell. Let me sell these things first. Then if people want more, they will call us, then we'll place the order, then you'll do it. And not everyone there is a criminal. Some of them, even though they are criminals, but then they are very, very remorseful. Whatever they did in the past, it's their past. It's a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes.
Mr. Amborch, on a light note, before we delve into this one, not everyone there is a criminal. There used to be the joke that prisons are full of people who are not guilty. But on a serious note, we're kind of moving away from the kind of punitive aspect of Mile 2 and other prisons, particularly in many African countries where we see kind of believe in the kind of Victorian thing about it's a punishment, let them rot there, but now we're trying to rehabilitate them. And of course, this is one such where they're making crafts that are of fairly decent quality and they're being sold at international trade fairs.
Absolutely. And when I heard when she said that everyone there is a criminal, then I retorted, oh yes, they are. But I know where you're heading. I know really where you're heading. That's it. Just because I'm banged up doesn't mean that I don't have any talent or I cannot do things.
Can't contribute.
Do you know how many
society.
Talented maniacs are in prison? They're all over the place. And yes, what a progressive idea. Let's give rehabilitation a chance. As you said, we tend to go for the punitive angles so much. We can be so harsh.
Very, very.
That's it. We just punish. We like to punish.
They can go there, they can pick up a skill, and when they're released, they can use that skill.
Then you have that.
Like a living.
So we hope that there'll be more emphasis, really, generally, more broadly in the prisons for rehabilitation, whatever chance you have. to take it, really, to try to rehabilitate them, because the rate of recidivism is quite high.
Indeed,
you
indeed.
see, as in most countries. So
That's
this
right.
is what you want to avoid, and this is the opportunity, the platform that these exposures, as it were, would allow.
Yeah, so thumbs up to the Jollof Charity Foundation for that. And now on to another story, really heartwarming story. This story, after it was broadcast, had over 30,000 views in the matter of a couple of days. It's one of the most viewed and commented on stories that we have published this year. You're wondering, what is it? Well, I won't spoil it for you. This clip might warm your heart. Have a look.
Hey, boys! My boys are here. Yeah, man. Good to see you. Yeah, they said you people were calling me Baba.
Basiru Drame, the current CEO of Carnifing General Hospital, shared the inspiration behind this generous gesture.
I actually narrated my observation or my incident here in our school page. And I suggested that, no, why not we do something for Mr. Adai? We actually saw him the token of appreciation, saying thank you for molding us. Thank you for making us what we are today. So everybody went in for the idea, everybody appreciated the idea, and we all went for it. We did not charge anyone, but we say, if you have anything that you want to actually give out, please, you are highly welcome to give out. So we contributed, and that we have something very meager. We felt this was far more than this, but again, this is what we have.
Mr. Mboj, Basiru Drame there, CEO of Carnifing General Hospital. In case anybody missed the beginning of the story, he went back to his old school, and to his shock, delight and surprise, his former teacher was there. And as you can see, he's not an old man, but he's neither a young man, Drame. And so him and others of the class of 98 decided to get together to reward Mr. Adai, who from his accent, I presume, is Ghanaian, and from the name. And yeah, a delightful surprise. And as I said, it's been the most commented and the most watched story that we have broadcast, because we put individual clips of the stories on Facebook. And as I sit here, it's had 30,000 views and over 1,700 comments and likes. So yeah, heartwarming stuff.
Glorious gesture.
Yeah, indeed.
Couldn't believe it, and that's it. And listening to Mr. Adai there, I said, oh, that's sort of like the old breed.
Yeah, well, that's what I felt when I watched it, and that's why I loved the story.
Yes, the sort of the vocational teachers, as we call them. They were like teaching in the best of times, but the passion, as it were, made them do great things with their pupils.
Yeah, sure.
That is why they remembered them. Afterwards. They remembered and came back with this $54,000. Not much in a certain sense, but in another sense, absolutely unbelievable, staggering. I can even say priceless. This $54,000, that's priceless. Absolutely. It's the thought in this. Absolutely.
Because it reflects what he meant in their lives and the change that he wrought on their lives. Yeah.
And absolutely, I think we sort of, perhaps we didn't talk about it as much, but really the impact that teachers have on students, extraordinary.
It really is, absolutely. And you know, I keep, every time I'm on and we talk about this kind of subject, I always give a shout out to my ex-teacher, Mrs. Streeter. And in case any of her relatives, she taught at Cathedral School in Freetown, and she was that kind of vocational teacher who had an interest in the well-being and the welfare of her pupils. But yeah, so big up to class of 98.
Absolutely, even if not with the lessons, now in my old age, sort of whenever I'm in a certain mood, I think of what Mrs. Carr, we had somebody called Della Carr, English language. She said to us, when you're really angry, don't say anything. Close your eyes and count to 10.
Right.
That grace period. That's when you really say hurtful things. That's really your nasty, or you say something that you might regret. So in my old age, I always invoke it. I always mention her. She never knew when she was telling us that that will have that impact. It had lived with me. And I suspect a good number of students will have one episode or two that you carry through in your life. Extraordinary what teachers live without really knowing what they're doing.
I think I might have to start using her advice even today, Mr. Mboj, based on what happened before I came to the studio. But that's another matter. And our final story, Farafenni Marathon and took place recently, and our colleague Gajaga was there. No, he didn't run in it. He just stood at the finish line. Here's some of what happened.
Echen Obega rushed to the finish line, completing a hat trick by winning the 21 kilometers Farafenni Marathon for the third time in a row.
I am so excited. I wasn't expecting to win, but thank God I have won. It was very tough because this one everybody came in. The great Sambova, Cristiano, Seni Sankan, everybody. It was a tough one. They gave me a tough time, and I managed to escape here at the hospital, so it wasn't easy.
The 10 kilometers race was another fierce contest amongst the runners in this category. One surprise was the eventual winner of the race, Mamadou Aliou Ba, who used to compete in the half marathon. He cited fitness issues for not competing in the longer distance, and his decision to go instead for the shorter distance proved to be the right one, as he won the 10 kilometers race in spectacular fashion.
And as I said, Gajaga didn't take part, but he was surprised at how many people did take part. And I'm not sure I believe Mr. Obega saying, you've won it 3 years in a row.
Absolutely.
So to say you didn't expect to win, I'm not sure anybody believed that. But nonetheless, big up to him. But the one thing that I was disappointed in, Gajaga didn't give us their times.
Absolutely, that's what I've got here. What was his time?
I wanted to know how good or, you know, how far are we in terms of the kind of long distance running. And this time it really was a proper half marathon, not 5 kilometers called a marathon. So, yeah. But,
absolutely. Yes, when we heard Eshan Obega, of course, and then when he said it was a tough lineup,
I
quite. Said, okay, that's a kind of praise.
It
was a tough lineup.
And he named some of the big guns that he beat.
Some of the big guns, but he beat them. So you better put that in context. Absolutely, he seemed to be now the marathon maestro. 3 years in a row. He's got a hat trick of marathons.
Hat trick of half marathons. So
absolutely. And what, $60,000 fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, that brings us to the end of the program. So thumbs up to Mr. Obega, and who knows, he might make it 4 in a row. Mr. Mboch, thank you very much for your interjections throughout the program. Thank you. And to Lamindi Sonko, thank you to your signing, and to the crew in the control room who keep us on time and say, come on, you're spending too long on that story. To you, the viewer, thank you for watching until we come your way again next week. Goodbye.